very much. I would suggest that we just jump to the third session, which is quite popular because we have 4 retailers wanted to present what they're doing. So we are working on the last but not least session, which is the design for circularity, creating safe and circular packaging, that will be introduced by Mr. Bastian Schupp, working for the European Commission Director General Health and Food Safety. And without any other pauses, I would like to suggest that Mr. Schupp is here, so maybe switch on your video.
Yes, hello, I'm Bastian Schupp. I think I switched off my video already. Yes. Thank you. I will continue straight away to avoid taking up too much time with this introduction. I think I just want to shortly introduce food contact legislation to you, and also to make the link to designing circular packaging a bit more. Well, I'm Bastian Schupp. I work for DG Sante, also called DG Health and Food Safety, which is a bit clearer maybe. We work to improve and protect human health, ensure that all food and medicinal products are safe, as well as protect animal health and welfare and plant health. I myself work for a unit which is called Food Processing Technologies and Novel Foods, and particularly I'm involved in food contact materials legislation. I think to us in DG Sante, of course, we are concerned very much about food safety. That is one of our main working pillars. And if you look at packaging, it's very important to food safety because of its functionality. It provides us with hygiene and long shelf life. It can provide information to consumer on safety as well as health. And it allows for traceability and quality control, and actually to assign the responsibility for the safety of the contents. And I think these things are very, very important to the ongoing discussions. However, to keep this introduction a bit manageable, I will just focus on the safety aspects of food contact materials, which is after all my background. That's maybe also more relevant for this particular session. Maybe the other things were a bit more relevant to the previous discussion. So if you take a look at food contact legislation, so what's it about? First of all, it applies to all materials and articles that foreseeable may come into contact with food. So not only to packaging, but also to things like tableware, food processing equipment, etc. And it requires that these materials and articles do not transfer the constituents to foods in amounts which may be hazardous or may endanger human health, essentially. It allows us at the Commission to establish a specific legislation on materials, which we very much have for plastics as well as recycled plastics. We do not have such specific legislation for quite a few other food contact materials. In particular, I want to mention paper and board here, which is also relevant probably for this discussion. But there's an ongoing revision of the food contact legislation, and we'll be starting an impact assessment somewhere early next year. At least that is the expectation. Well, if you look at the legislation for plastic food contact materials, that exists already for quite long. I think for over 3 decades, we're controlling the composition of primary plastic materials by setting out rules on the composition. For recycled plastic, we also have legislation. We are working to implement that legislation now for 10 years, which has been proven scientifically and administratively a bit challenging. Also, we are foreseeing some enforcement problems for when it's fully implemented, but are presently working towards the authorization of mechanical recycling processes for PET, which will be the first step in completing the legislation for recycled plastic. Once we have done that, we will start working on all other processes and materials, so that will start hopefully towards the end of 2021. But as I said, this process we've been working on for 10 years, which is actually very long. So why is recycling for food contact materials so difficult? And that has everything to do, I think, with the possible presence of contaminants. And those contaminants are very relevant for the safety of the food contact materials. So the transfer of substances which could endanger human health, as our legislation so eloquently says. But also for things like quality and perception of the food, because if there is enough taste, consumers might not buy recycled materials. If the packaging looked badly, I think we had actually an example of paint, then they won't buy it either. So it's I think a bit of a wider relevance. And those contaminants, where do they originate from? I think for general plastic materials, so not for food contact applications, there's quite a lot of worry of so-called legacy substances. So for instance, brominated flame retardants in certain plastic materials, or lead, which has been used in PVC, that so much is not a problem for food contact materials. Rather, it's a more diffuse group of contaminants which come from all sides, like the use, the manufacturing, the contact with the food itself, misuse, waste collection, etc. All of these parts of the use phase may introduce contaminants. And then we have non-food contact use. If we start to mix a plastic with from other applications with food contact, also that we want to avoid, because we had such clear rules on the composition. Now, what for us is very relevant and also connects to this discussion is therefore the decontamination. And decontamination should be made as easy as possible. In other words, we should not have very high contaminant levels, because then it's easier to decontaminate those plastics, and then for us in the end to approve that these processes are safe. And I think here the major keys are, so we should be able to facilitate separate collection by means of our packaging design. We should have good quality control of the collected materials, etc. Then perhaps also the simplicity of packaging, so not multi-layers or several types of polymers together would help. And maybe an idea what would also help is to ensure that other consumer packaging, so for instance detergent bottles, etc., are in fact compliant with food contact rules, because then you don't have to separate them out, which is also a bit of a problem. So I think there are several opportunities for packaging design and waste collection. And for me, our real bottom line message would be get those contaminants out, and then it becomes more easy to approve them for food contact. One final remark, which I wrote down actually a bit in a reaction to an earlier presentation. I think one of the retailers was saying, well, we strive for 100% recycled content. At present, actually, that doesn't make me very happy, because that amount of content isn't yet available recycled on the market, which means that it creates a competition, and that competition then calls for imports from outside of Europe. And those imports are even less controlled in terms of contaminant levels. And I think we must be therefore very careful to push for 100% content, and for the time being, try to get to lower content levels, which we can actually meet in this market. So that was my very fast introduction. I hope I covered a little bit and made the link to the discussion later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. You had raised some quite topical challenges regarding ensuring that whatever packaging is, should it be recycled or virgin, they should always be safe, because that's where we go first and foremost. I can see that Götz has already switched on his camera, which is great. So we have Götz Brandbauer from Lidl, is head of Brussels office, and he will speak about his company strategies.
Hi, thank you, Isabel. Good afternoon to everyone. I trust that you can hear me well.
Yes, we can. You can also put your slideshow so we don't see your notes. There it is.
There you go. I just need to go to the front to get started. There we go. All right. Thank you very much. I plan to 10 minutes, so I'm going to get started right away and dive in. My intervention today has 3 parts. I'm going to explain to you how we change the way that we use plastics in our operations. I'm going to highlight some of the challenges we experience in that context. I'm going to share with you concrete examples of changes we already implemented, looking at our packaging application. And I will highlight several policy recommendations that we think will help achieve a circular economy in Europe. I'll stick to the basics in my introduction. I run the Brussels Public Affairs Office for Lidl. We're a chain of discount supermarkets. We operate stores all over Europe. Discount supermarket meaning that our assortment is somewhat reduced compared to many other supermarkets. We have a strong focus on own brand products. Lidl is part of the Schwarz Group. You may know our other retail arm, which is Kaufland, and in total we operate just over 12,000 stores in the entire European Union and some stores outside of Europe as well. When you look at the Schwarz Group as a whole, we're more than just a retail group. Mentioned before, we have a strong focus, especially in Lidl, on own brand products. And some of the core articles in our shops we produce ourselves. So that would be baked goods or ice cream, water and soft drinks, just to name a few examples. At the other end of the value chain, so after the retail stage and at the consumer stage, we have also somewhat recently set up our own waste management and recycling operations. So if you take that in whole for some of our products in our stores, we actually have influence on the entire value chain, including the post-consumer stage. This is quite relevant, and we'll get back to that a little bit later in the presentation. Collectively, all the different business divisions of the Schwarz Group, we have agreed a joint plastic strategy. And the aim of that plastic strategy is to use less plastics and to close material loops. Also there I will focus on later, especially on closing loops. Just in a nutshell, all of the Lidl and Kaufland countries committed to the same goals, which is by 2025, we want to use 20% less plastic. And we want all of the packaging of our own brand product to be maximum recyclable. Maximum recyclable refers to the fact that nowadays in all packaging, we have small parts that in today's recycling processes simply cannot be recycled. If you think about ink or glue, that you have to take into account when speaking of 100%. The strategy that we developed jointly, it's about improving the way we use plastics and optimizing resource use overall. It is designed to cover the entire value chain of our plastics and of our products. But today I would like to focus on the 2 most relevant aspects for the discussion we're having today, which is the redesign and recycle aspects. As a food retailer, realistically, we cannot operate without packaging, and that includes plastic packaging. There are retailers that can do that, but that is a fundamentally different business model, and that is, I think, a reality we need to take into account. Since we cannot, as Lidl, as Kaufland, go without packaging, we need to do the next best thing, which is to optimize. We want to improve the way we use plastics in our packaging whenever we cannot go without it, whenever we cannot reduce it. And ultimately, the goal of our activities is to improve the design of all packaging so that it can be collected, sorted, and recycled, so that the material, we can feed it back into the material loop. Now, when we look at opportunities to optimize or replace packaging, we realize very quickly that there are no simple solutions. And the reason that we cannot really speak about simple solutions is because we have trade-offs between the different objectives. I'd like to highlight 2 examples. The one for us as a retailer, when we redesign packaging, we need to meet different objectives. The one is we want to improve the environmental performance of our packaging. However, at the same time, it is essential for us that we maintain the functionality of the packaging, just to usually to protect the food from a perspective, but also to increase the shelf life or to protect the product during the transport. Of course, at the same time, we're a business, we need to keep the costs under control. So profitability is a factor in this equation. When redesigning packaging, it's getting those three and finding the solution that meets all three objectives. That's the tricky part. Another example is about trade-offs between the different targets. So if you take flexible packaging, for example, thin foils, widely used in food packaging, they are very light. We heard it earlier today in the presentation. So one of the advantages is that they contribute to keeping the overall plastics packaging generation lower. They're also quite helpful in functionality. They offer a lot of functionality, so they help in preserving shelf life of foods. So if we were to go without such products, we would probably run into difficulties regarding shelf life and potentially even higher food waste. But at the same time, as useful as they are from the functionality side, they're today impossible to recycle, at least with today's technology. So they do undermine our recycling targets. And if we were to improve the recyclability of that type of packaging, we would use different material that is easier to recycle, but that also probably means that it's thicker and heavier. So that again would run counter to our reduction targets where we want to use less plastics. So just to be clear, I'm mentioning that not because I want to offer an excuse for doing nothing or for inaction. It's just a reminder that there are no simple solutions. Very importantly, there is not one single solution that solves all of our packaging challenges. And whenever we discuss possible measures and possible solutions, we need to think very carefully about the unintended consequences. Because for us, the ultimate goal of this strategy is to offer solutions. We want to solve problems. We don't want to shift the burden into another area. I mentioned before that we want to feed materials back into the loop. So the circularity aspect is at the core of our strategy. And that means that we're looking at the circular properties of different materials that are used in our food packaging. Now, experiences so far show that we have an issue with biodegradable and compostable packaging because those materials cannot be recycled into new products, at least not with the same function. These types of materials, they do have their advantages. For example, when biodegradable packaging or compostable packaging is littered into the environment. But we want to optimize our packaging for recycling and for circularity and not for littering. So one of the conclusions for the moment is that we in our packaging would like to avoid these types of materials. Black plastics is another one of these example, quite well known for a type of plastic application that is difficult to recycle. We're currently working with our suppliers to phase out the black plastics where possible. I want to talk briefly about secondary raw materials and recyclates in food packaging. Bastian mentioned it, and largely I agree. It is a particularly big challenge. It is on the horizon. We would like to get there, but there are some serious obstacles on the way. Again, the trade-offs and conflicting targets come to mind. Bastian mentioned most of the relevant examples. Most packaging waste streams contain substances and chemicals that we don't want to see in food packaging. Separate food and non-food packaging at the source when we're collecting it. So we have a mix of materials there. Of course, we could go and lower the thresholds to make more material somewhat suitable for use in food packaging applications. But that would be completely unacceptable to consumers because we would be compromising safety for circularity. Getting clean recycled materials in food grade quality requires a lot of work, which makes the material more expensive. We could work with incentives there. The upcoming plans for circular for EU plastics tax come to mind as an opportunity to maybe use that for incentives. Looking at some of the examples, I'm going to jump through that to have some time for the conclusions at the end. We're quite proud of the PET loop that we have on average over 50% recycled content in our own brand beverage bottles. Some of them we already mentioned. We already achieved 100% recycled PET. We're aiming to increase the average to 75% by 2025. We recently launched this product, which is a milk alternative product, which was awarded for its particularly sustainable design because it's, again, 100% recycled PET, and the sleeve is designed in a way that it's easy to remove it during the sorting and recycling process. I mentioned before the black plastics, especially in meat packaging. We at some point tested gray plastic that didn't solve the problem of the sorting. So now we switched to transparent packaging, and it's working out quite well, but it's still in the pilot phase. And for some fruit and vegetables, we switched to using, it's kind of a special paper made from a plant that grows in biogas plants. So it's a bit of a waste product. We're using that to do paper packaging that can be recycled in the normal paper recycling. So from our point of view, a promising solution. We're looking at working on scaling it up right now. To conclude, let me stress once again, there are no simple solutions. We need to keep a close eye on the trade-offs. As the Schwarz Group, we do believe that the circular economy is the answer to the challenges we face in waste and packaging, and to solve the challenges we have there, but we cannot do it alone. All the actors in the value chain need to do their role. They need to play their part, including consumers. I mentioned some of the improvements that we think are necessary at the European level on the slide, from common definitions to quality standards. Bastian mentioned before on food contact materials, we need to see if the current rules are still fit for purpose or if we can improve it. Also, harmonization, always welcome from our point of view, for example, looking at sorting instructions. I would like to stress it's important for us that these are established at the European level if we want to make the circular economy work. They're essential to really drive up the recycling system that we have in the member states. And I know we're also talking about reuse and including recycled content. From our point of view, looking at circularity and keeping the materials in the loop, whenever we use plastics, it's important that we have a recycling scheme and system that is fit for purpose to keep these materials in the loop. So we need to really get the recycling done and to get it to work to cover this side of the loop. Final word, European market, circular economy can only work if it makes economic sense. So we need to give value to recycled materials to make the circular economy work. Thank you very much. Looking forward to your questions.
With my, can you hear me? Okay, so yes, so we're going to get another approach, which is from Stina Wallström from IKEA Rent and Supply. If she can, yes, I can hear.
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. Let me try to share my screen with you. And I will basically say the same thing as legal, which is always a good thing to hear that the industry needs the same, even if we are in different parts of the value chain and sell different products, because that makes it easier for us to achieve it. So I will start briefly by explaining how IKEA looks on circularity, but bear with me, I will be focusing on packaging very shortly. But the way we have been conducting our business up until today is this. It's very linear. We extract the raw materials, we sell the products to our customers, and then they basically end up in landfill or incineration. This is, of course, not sustainable. We cannot work like this, and we do not want to work like this because we waste materials and we only meet our customer once. We want to meet our customers as many times as possible. This is the future, we believe, a circular business. where we help the customer to reuse their products as many times as possible. We give them care instructions. We make sure that the products we sell can be developed and adapted to new life circumstances. When the products are a little worse for wear, we are now developing a lot of different business ideas based on how we can repair and refurbish the products and resell them to our customers, or help other people resell them to their customers. We also talk about remanufacturing and recycling of parts. If we construct our furnitures and products in the right way, we think that we can re-enter parts of our products into our supply chain and use them again, thereby prolonging their lives. And as a very, very last resource, yes, there is recycling. And that's actually why I wanted to show this slide in the context of packaging as well, because recycling is not circular economy. It's the last loop of a circular economy and a circular business. Because as soon as we start to recycle materials, we start to degrade them and make them less valuable. It's far better to keep them as collected as possible and don't try to make them into new materials. But for packaging, sometimes that is needed. We just launched a new packaging strategy where we aim for 3 key components: affordability, accessibility, and sustainability. And we actually think that we can get all 3 of them at once. And since this is about sustainability, I will focus on this target for this presentation. When we think about packaging and sustainability, it's incredibly important to look at it in a holistic manner. We cannot say that we should phase out this particular material, that's the most important, or we should only use reusable material. We need to make sure that we're always using the most sustainable packaging solution available, taking everything into account. And first and foremost, the packaging need to protect the goods. It's nothing worse for the environment than a sub-optimized packaging destroying, making the goods come to harm. We have within IKEA no product where the packaging is more environmentally burdensome than the product itself. So we need to protect the goods. But we need to do that, of course, in the right way. We need to choose the right material. For our products, that is almost always paper-based. So we are aiming to phasing out plastics from our range. We will still use it where there is a very good reason to do so. But for our products and our range, paper and cardboard is most often the right material to use. When we have chosen the material that is the best to protect the goods, then the old loop of reduce, reuse, recycle is actually very useful still. First and foremost, can we use less material and still protect the goods? If we can do that, we should do that. We at IKEA, we have been working with this concept for a very long time. We are quite famous for our flat packaging that is very material efficient. And also this is an area where cost and sustainability goes very much hand in hand. If we can buy less materials, it will be cost efficient as well as sustainable. Which is a little bit more new to us is the reuse. We are developing a couple of concepts right now where either we at IKEA or our customers will be able to reuse the packaging. I think that this will be more and more important in the future. We are used to selling in brick and mortar shops in our big blue boxes. You go there, you buy our flat packaging, you take them home in their own car, and then you dispose of the packaging. But now we have a growing e-commerce market, which is quite challenging when it comes to be packaging efficient, but also an opportunity to make sure that if the consumer wants to return a product for IKEA, he or she should be able to use the same packaging as it came in a very easy way. Also, maybe in the future you will never have to buy a carton for your furniture when you should move, because you have saved all the perfectly good IKEA ones and you use them again when you move to a bigger apartment or to your dream house. There is lots in store when it comes to reuse, but we are far from perfect in that respect as it stands today. And then, of course, for packaging, recycling will always be a thing. And there we need to work with partners. Some packaging we may want to take back ourselves and then recycle in-house, but most often we will work together with recycling facilities and make sure that the materials come to use time and time again. And all this is needed to support a circular business, and a holistic perspective is needed. We need to, even if it's difficult, we need to look at all options at once and see what would be the best way forward. And we cannot do this alone. First and foremost, we need to do it together with our customers, but also we need help from legislators. And we need harmonization. We need everybody to strive to the same goals in the same way. And I've taken one example here because that's already now a problem for us, and a problem that we really want the legislators to help us fix. Is harmonize the requirement for extended producer responsibility schemes. There are several of those available, and for all packaging falls under some one or another harmonized extended producer responsibility scheme. And that is good, because these schemes are there to make sure that we who put our products on the market also take responsibility for our products and for the waste they eventually produce. We are fully willing to take that responsibility, no problem at all. However, we need harmonization. Today, all different EU member states, they define what items we should return, how they should be sorted, and how they should be reported in their own way. And that is unsustainable. The amount of bureaucracy this creates is enormous. And what is even worse is that it hinders the circular economy, because it's super difficult under these circumstances to create a sustainable internal market for secondary raw materials. So if we could agree on one way of doing this, that would be excellent. And I know it's difficult because it would demand from the European Commission to go to the member states and say, you can no longer decide how you arrange your extended producer responsibility schemes. That is not very popular, but you're not here to be popular. You're here to do the right thing, and I'm sure you will. It's also a problem for the member states because they will have to go to the private companies owning these producer responsibility schemes and tell them, you're no longer free to conduct your business in the way that you want. But it needs to be done. We all want the same thing, so let's make sure that we work for that same thing in a consistent manner and together, because it is a wonderful development that we all want to become more sustainable. So let's not waste that by not being able to agree on the details. We have agreed on the big and difficult stuff. So let's agree on the details and work together, and we will be super strong and create the secondary raw material market that we need to obtain the circular economy for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have some keywords popping up. Harmonization have been heard so much today. May I just suggest that Anna Alves takes the following presentation. So she's head of private label for Sonai, a retailer in Portugal. Yes.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Am I sharing the screen or not?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yes, I think you need to work on.
Yes.
I know, for some, do you have two screens maybe?
Yeah, maybe
Yes.
I have to.
So we look,
Okay.
there it is.
Okay. So thank you. Thank you for this invitation. Actually, the previous presentations, and I would like to thank not only to the organization of this event, but also to the previous speakers, because they made my life much more easier for this sharing. I strongly believe in this kind of event where we share knowledge and we share experiences. I think this is the best way to move forward and to move to a circular economy. So I will start jumping to something that you probably know, that almost a half of the 65 million tons of plastic that we produce in Europe, they're actually used in packaging, and only a very small part of this is being actually recycled. So as a food retailer, and I'm here representing Sonai, we are leading the food retailer business in Portugal. We are responsible for placing everyday millions of these packages in the market. But on the other hand, we are pretty aware of the growing misinformation about plastics. And when in fact plastic is an excellent material, we already hear about it today. He's a hero when it comes to giving access to a large range of products and to people that otherwise could never access them. So I think plastic is not the villain here, but the way we are using it, the amount of it, and especially the issues that we are bringing in terms of insufficient recycling. So today we hear before in the IKEA example, most of our packaging also comes from virgin materials, and we extract raw materials, we produce packaging, and when products are consumed, usually this packaging have only one destination, garbage. And once we know this, we cannot remain indifferent. So we decided to accelerate and to lead the transition from a linear system to a circular packaging system where the materials that we use don't become waste, but new packages. And so we assume this commitment, ensuring that by 2025, all packaging from our brands will be recyclable, reusable, or compostable. So through innovation and a truly efficient eco-design process, we believe that we can seek for better solutions for our packaging, and we can minimize our footprint and promote a more circular ecosystem for plastics. It's very important to have the awareness and the involvement of all the stakeholders present in this value chain, since from the raw material producers to the final consumer. Well, for us, we started our journey with, I think, the most important step, a very, very important assessment to our private brand packaging in order to identify which one of them could we or should we redesign. So we mapped the type of packaging, if we have a bottle, tray, cup, flexible, the complexity of that packaging. I mean, how many different materials are we using in that package? And the typification of each one of these materials are we using in this package. It is very important to do this in collaboration. And here, I think is crucial to have conscious suppliers involved with this purpose that are able to offer, or at least to go and find some alternatives without a significant increase in the cost price of the product. It's crucial to have a modern and competent recycling industry, and also to cooperate with the different organizations that are truly focused in contributing to the solution. For example, in this case, the validation of the recyclability of our packaging is done by an external entity that ensures that with the recycling industry that exists in Portugal, that the decisions that we are making for each package are effectively contributing to increase the probability of that precise package to be recycled. So this assessment, together with the knowledge of the existing recycling flows in the country, in this case in Portugal, allowed us to list our priorities. So we have been eliminating and reducing the unnecessary materials. Like Valentina, I think she asked, you have to ask yourself first, do we really need this? So in toothpaste, we get rid of the boxes, because this is important not only for plastic, but for all the materials. We have been substituting the materials that are not recycled, at least not in a larger scale in our country. And of course, trying to incorporate, of course, looking first at the security and the food safety of the products, but trying to increase the amount of recycled content that we have in our packaging. It's very important to realize that during this process, we have to have people that are able to lead and have courage to take decisions, because in some cases, when we do this assessment, we reach the conclusion that we have to change totally the packaging of some products. But eco-design doesn't solve, as we have seen, the problem by itself. So it is useful to design and produce recyclable packaging if in the end, after being used, is still going to the garbage. So we talk with the consumers, and like we saw on the beginning of this event, consumers are saying that it's very difficult to sort and recycle. It takes time, it takes a lot of work. And so we decided to take our commitment to another level, and we developed a recycle iconography for all our branded products. So for our private label. This iconography explains in a very, very visual and simple way how to prepare each packaging for recycling. And it shows specifically where should it be placed. So we will have this iconography present in all our private label products until the end of next year. And we know for sure, as we heard before, this is not a journey that you can do by yourself. So in addition to this valuable help that we are getting from the consumers when they prepare and they separate the used package for recycle, SONAI has been collaborating with several global initiatives that aim to promote greater circularity in plastics. And I would like to just highlight two examples of this kind of collaboration. First of all, New Plastic Economy Global Commitment. We were the first Portuguese retailer to join this important international movement and to publicly commit to a set of ambitious goals in our operation. It's very important to make these statements, to put ambitious goals in front of yourself and to publicly admit them. Also, Portuguese Pact for Plastics. And this is a collaborative platform that brings together all the different stakeholders in the national plastic value chain, because as someone in the chat were commenting, it's very important to realize the recyclable industry that exists in the country in order to make the good choices for that local. So as we've been saying and discussed along this day, this is a very complex process, and it requires a true involvement from all of us, from the conceptions of the packaging through the proper use and disposal from the consumers and the entire logistical and recycling industry. At SONAI, I'm happy to say that this was the first year where we were able to double the amount of virgin plastic compared to the last year that we were able to save. But we use this information not to stop us, but to inspire us to move on, to move forward. And we will continue to collaborate and keep the courage, because I really believe this is absolutely key to move on and to lead this transition. And I think I saved some time also, hopefully.
Thank you very much for keeping within your 10 minutes presentation. We will be a bit ahead of, a bit late into a presentation for 10 minutes, I guess. So I will just ask Marlene Teller-Bloomer, who is quality manager at Coop DK, Coop Denmark, to just take the floor and say what they've been working on, which is mainly removing PFSCs from some of their packaging. and then we will follow up with the conclusions.
Yes, and thank you very, very much for the invitation. I will try to be as quick as possible. Just a very short introduction. We are Coop Denmark. We are the largest retailer in Denmark. And I would like to tell you about how we work with chemistry. This is not, you can say, sustainability for packaging, but it's maybe more also circular economy, because it's in regards chemical issues which are very important for the packaging, because it do affect the human health and the environment in quite big scale. So I will tell you how we work to phase out PFAS from our packaging. We're the largest retailer in Denmark, and we have those chains that you see in the bottom. We have 40,000 employees, and we have 4,000 private products and private labels. So we have the possibility to set up requirements specific for our own private labels, but we do also work with branded goods and set up requirements which goes beyond legislation if we find the need. Just a very quick picture of Denmark. You can see we have many shops. We are a small country, but we also do cover the small suburbs and cities all over Denmark. Coop are a special corporation because we are owned by 1.7 million members in Denmark, and we are quite old actually, and we have worked with responsibility from the beginning. So you see a timeline here with one of the steps we have, and to be very brief, I can show you here are the examples of how we do implement requirements and bans which goes beyond legislation. Those are the most examples in regards to the chemistry, where we do have identified problems which are not covered by the authorities or by the industry, which are concerned by scientists, authorities, NGOs, and so on. Then we have the possibility to set up special requirements, and we are quite proud of many of these requirements that you see here, and many of them are in regards also EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals, where we started to look into that for more than 10 years ago, and we have a ban for all our private label products. The PFCs or the PFAs are a very special issue to us, because we saw this more than 6 years ago. We had a dialogue with scientists. We followed the discussion in the media, also with the authorities, NGOs, and so on, and realized that here was a very big problem for the packaging, for the paper and paperboard packaging, which were in food contacting, because there are added PFAS to the surface to be fat and water repellent. And you see this picture, it was linked to a lot of serious diseases, and also to an environmental problem, because those chemical PFAS is more than 5,000 chemical substances, and they are also called forever chemicals because they are not biodegradable. It will stay out there almost forever and can do harm to the human body and also to the environment. So we read this Helsingør statement, which were the leading scientists all over the world, setting up that we need to do something about the PFAS in consumer products. And then we start to research and discuss, and had a lot of dialogue with the experts. And then back in 2014, I had a talk with a scientist here in Denmark. He's one of the world leading scientists. And he said that he was the one adopting the TDI 10 years ago, and maybe it's 100 or more than 1,000 times too high. And he knew that children were particularly vulnerable, and we realized that we have to do something about this. Then it was a very high media focus in Denmark. We had the DTU and scientists also in Denmark pointed out the serious problem. And we started to look into this in Coop and decided to ban the dangerous PFAS from our food packaging in private label back in 2014. Then we start to map all our assortment to identify which product had use of PFAS. And then after 8 months, we were almost succeeded, but then we realized that we have one product left, which were microwave popcorn. Our suppliers, there was no one in the world actually which could supply us with a PFAS-free packaging. So in May 2015, we decided to remove the microwave popcorn from our shelf to put extra pressure on our producer, suppliers, and also to keep our consumers safe. And because why we did it back in May 2015 was this was the last product remained with still PFAS in our shelves, and because there was a new scientific analysis showing that if you were pregnant and had a high level of PFAS in your blood, then your risk for early abortion will be 16 times higher. So that's why we decided to take it away. And this picture you see here, it was not published anywhere, but it was in fact a real proposal to a notice and a sign to put up to information to our consumers in the shop to tell them why they have to find empty shelves in our shop when they were looking for a microwave popcorn on Friday evening. We choose another picture, but we did inform why we had to do it. Then several bans was implemented during the coming years. Textiles and footwear, cosmetic was last year, also home textiles, as I mentioned, food packaging 2015. And also when you buy fast food in our shops, it will be PFAS free. Then last year it was we decided also that the cover for PFAS should also cover the branded goods, the cosmetics. So we have to throw out a world-leading ban in our shops because we do not want that PFAS should be in cosmetics that you put on your body every day. It was also decided based on a precautionary principle. And this has, during the time, seems that it has been the very right decision because there are really scary new evaluation for the PFAS. Just I want to show you how we work. We also work very much to involve our consumers and tell them about why we do this and why we need legislation on this area, because there are still no European legislation for the group of PFAS. It's still missing. And I cannot understand why, because there are so much scientific data showing that this is a very, very huge problem. So we made this campaign 3 years ago, and I will show you a video to tell you how we did it. It was quite unusual for a retail chain to do this. Yes, and be very brief about this. As I said before, there are still no legislation for the food contact material. It's still missing. They are still negotiating. But very good news is that Denmark, in fact, has implemented a Danish ban this summer, actually. So from July this year, all packaging should be PFAS-free if you sell it in Danish shops. And just to say about the risk assessment for this chemical, it had been used almost 2,000 times. So the prediction that the level TDI was way too high came true, unfortunately, and that's make even more pressure to us to do something about those chemicals. The next slide is just that we think that all non-essential use of PFAS shall be banned. And if you would like to read more and also follow our definition for the PFAS, you can read it here when you have the time. So with this word, thank you very much for your attention.
Sorry, I was speaking by myself. Thank you very much for all of the speakers for participating, and thank you very much for the speakers that have been answering directly on the chat, because there's been some quite extremely active discussion on practical implementation of the different strategies. So thank you very much for that. I would like to suggest that we can do one round of questions. In that case, if you have some questions, please raise your hand. I would like to insist on the fact that we should have questions and not comments. So I will leave you from some minutes to see if you want to do it.